Hello, and welcome to this special edition of the Network Collective Short Take. Today's Short Take episode is being sponsored by Anuta Networks. Anuta has built a platform called ATOM, which stands for Assurance, Telemetry, and Orchestration for Multi-Vendor Networks. But rather than coming on to sell you about the value of the system themselves, they've invited one of their customers to tell you about their real-world experience using ATOM and how it has helped them improve network operations. So Matt, to get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what Neustar does?
Sure. My name is Matt Wilson. I am a director of network engineering at Neustar. Kind of give you a bit of idea of my background. I've been doing DDoS protection services for about 15 years now. I'm on my fourth different company, building up the network and then kind of getting it set up from an operational perspective. So Neustar brought me in. Neustar is a company that helps our clients grow, guard, and guide their businesses by kind of tying together understanding and intelligence around people, places, and things. So we offer a number of different things in addition to DDoS protection services, things like marketing services, risk services, registry services. But my particular area is the digital performance and defense. Okay.
So speaking specifically about the project that led you to ATOM, what problems were you trying to solve that ATOM ended up being the solution for?
Yeah, so 2 years ago or so, we started undertaking a project to completely overhaul our entire network, right? So going from 4 nodes to over 14 nodes, going from just a couple terabits of bandwidth over to 10 terabits of bandwidth, multi-vendor environment, things like that. We kind of very quickly identified that this was going to pose some operational scale issues, right? So the idea that I now had to manage a lot of different devices, deployments concurrently around the world simultaneously, 14 different locations and more across a multi-vendor environment. This was a problem that we knew we had to look into. And so we looked at a number of different things and we ended up selecting Anuta.
When you were looking at those, did you consider any alternatives? I mean, who else was on the list that you were looking at?
Yeah, so we looked at a number of different ones. We primarily looked at either kind of a roll your own type of solution, whether that was using either building something from scratch or using something like Ansible. We looked at that. We also looked at kind of vendor specific solutions. In the end, like none of those really kind of seemed to fit the bill for a number of reasons. So kind of first off, we're not a huge dev org, right? We don't have a whole lot of developers. That's not really our forte, is building those kinds of platforms like that. So, and most of what existed were things that simply pushed configs. They had no awareness of what was actually out in the network. So they were purely just automation type of tools, which definitely have their place. They can be very valuable, but what we were really looking for was more orchestration tools. So we were looking for something that can be aware of what's in the network, identify whether or not changes need to be made, and allow us to truly properly orchestrate end-to-end services that we deploy in our network.
That's a really interesting component, because I think when we hear about orchestration systems, I think we almost hear about analytics, telemetry, and orchestrations as different systems or different components, but you're lumping them all together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does Anuta do there? I mean, like, what is it about? What analytics or what about that system is driving that they combine those things?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I really liked about it was the fact that in the same platform, I can tie together telemetry from the devices. I can tie together alerting from the devices. I can tie together SNMP from all of my devices. And within the same system, without having to do a lot of dev effort to create these business rules to tie all these pieces together, which was basically, when you looked at it, it was about as bad as basically just building the whole thing from scratch. So within the same system, I can take all this telemetry. It allows us to focus on our business rules, right? The things that we want to do in the network when something happens. That's one of the big benefits to us, is it allowed us to focus on what's truly important to us without having to go off and build all just what I would consider the block and tackle.
That makes sense. Yvonne,
Very
you have a
cool.
question? Yeah.
Yeah. And so you guys, you specialize in DDoS and attack data from the internet. So scale, we've already heard several terabytes of bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about Atom's ability to scale with the needs of your infrastructure?
Yeah, so that's one of the nice new things that the Atom platform does for our Site Protect NG, which is what we call our DDoS protection service. It allows us to take all of this data and it can grow with us because it meshes well with our cloud initiatives of taking a lot of these things, building it into our cloud platforms, and doing that in cloud services. It allows us to scale that. It scales great horizontally. So we were able to start small as we were deploying. We could start small. We could have it pulling data from a specific number of devices. And as we're growing, as we're adding more, and as like I talked about, as we go from 14 and to much, much more, it allows that platform to scale really well horizontally. So
you mentioned a couple of very interesting things there. I kind of want to expound on them for a second. You mentioned cloud platforms. Mm-hmm. So are we talking hybrid cloud here? So is this on-prem as well as out in public cloud offerings, or are you?
Yeah, so you can actually start if you want. If you have a well-established architecture that you kind of have like your hybrid cloud where you're running a cloud platform within your own data centers, you can start there. Really anything that's Kubernetes based, this Atom platform can run on. So whether you want to do it there, you want to do it in Google Cloud, you want to do it in AWS, you can pretty much deploy it anywhere you want.
And the other thing you mentioned, and I think you hinted at this also as well, with the fact that it's Kubernetes based, it scales horizontally. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, is this like a microservices platform? Is that what
Yeah, that's exactly what it does. It's all based on microservices. So individual pieces can run active. So you can scale it as much as your business requires. So obviously in the DDoS world, and we've got customers that literally a couple of minutes of downtime can be hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue lost. So for us, having something that this platform can manage our devices, manage our network, and be completely available with full redundancy, active. I can independently update things. I don't have to take downtime for that because Atom is microservices based, because it can be cloud based or on-prem based. It really let us scale very well to meet our needs.
That sounds really powerful. So what would you say are some of the best results? I mean, we've talked about, some of the technical features and some of the things that are of value, but I mean, to the business, what was the impact? What was the impact to your operations?
Yeah. So one of the big things we were able to do was to start cutting down on just human error, right? So by doing this, by making everything kind of programmatic, we cut down on a fair amount of human error by doing that. One of the other things we did is just the simple amount of time it took to deploy customers, to make changes in the network, came down quite drastically. We were able to take things that if people were doing it by hand might be, a good hour worth of work, and we can cut it down to about 5 minutes.
And is that because you were templatizing configurations and that type of thing? I mean, like what allowed you to reduce that time scale?
Yeah, that was basically, we're able to do that because before this, you either had to have a series of scripts that went and hit each individual device, and then you had to require the human to be the one that was sort of transitioning data from script to script and making sure, double checking, ensuring that everything went as exactly as you expected it to, and hope that there weren't any errors and you had to roll back. Anuta's basically allowed us to do that all in one sort of atomic operation, right? So through their APIs, through our service models, we've written it so we put in the data, we can say execute go, and it goes out and does it across all the different devices, across regions. And then if there's ever a problem, we can roll back atomically as well. So, and I can do that even between execution. So because it's kind of a service based, so I deploy a service, and that service might involve something, a customer end-to-end piece. Because I can do that, I don't have to just roll back device configs. I'm rolling back a service execution effectively.
What about troubleshooting? Has it helped you reduce the mean time to recovery or anything like that?
Yeah. So what we've been able to do, one of the big focuses, and this is kind of a never-ending effort, is we're identifying things that are very common troubleshooting problems, right? So if I want to run, say, if I want to go and run and execute something on all 14 devices at exactly the same time, I can do that, and I can bring that data back and get a specific snapshot of time, and bring that back. So now the operator can look at it, they can identify what looks like maybe there's a problem, and then go execute. Then the other thing we're focusing on is the information gathering, having the human look at it, make a decision about what might be a problem, and then going and executing a response, right? So all the very common types of things, that's all stuff that we're building into the platform from a network operations perspective. And I talked before about doing it from more of a customer perspective, a provisioning perspective. But yeah, from an operations perspective, we're able to bring down some of our mean time to resolution quite a bit by doing this.
Very cool. And as you look at what you're doing with the platform now, what's next? What are you planning to do with Atom that maybe you're not doing today?
Yeah, so I think we're going to start tying it more into our initial phase. We didn't tie it into our portal for like automated deployments yet. We wanted to give our operators a little more hands-on experience with it, make sure that we worked out any kinks, things like that. Meanwhile, kind of our next step is to really do much more integration there. And to be honest, this is a never-ending thing. The one thing I love about this platform is it can literally do anything you want it to do. If you have a device or a system in your network that has an API or a CLI or any way in which you can log into that thing and issue commands, Anuta can interact with it. So, for us, I mean, that can be things like if you have a network performance monitoring platform that you use, Anuta can tie into that. So we can do some really interesting things like if a mitigation starts, I want to go create a service check so that I can double check what the performance of our network is through the course of that mitigation. So we can get really creative with things like that.
That's interesting. So, I mean, you're using this tool. If you were to talk with someone who's starting today with deploying Anuta, what are some of the things you learned along the way? Maybe some of the lessons learned or tips or tricks for people who are getting started.
Yeah. So probably my biggest recommendation here is if you think this is going to be a plug and play type of vendor solution, it's not, but it's also not intended to be, right? It is. I like it because it kind of bridges the gap between being a one size fits all plug and play sort of thing that may not get you all the features you want and all the capabilities you want, but at the same time, it's also not this like super ethereal thing. I can put it out there. I can get a lot of value out of it day one, but you can dream big with it, right? You got to think big with it. You can start small, but really there's no end to what you can do. To kind of go back to one of Yvonne's questions, the telemetry stuff to us is one of the things that we're really going to build out, right? We're going to really expand on that. And I think there's a huge amount of power for a lot of network operators there. The idea that I can get telemetry out of all my devices and I can automatically execute commands and multi-vendor commands in my network at the same, based on things that are happening, data that's coming out of my network is really, really powerful. And I think that's where we're going to go. I think that's definitely things that people ought to be looking at.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Matt, thanks for coming on to tell us about Anuta today. That was a lot of great information. If you're listening to this and you want to find out more about how Anuta can help you with network assurance and orchestration, you can head on over to anutanetworks.com/collective for lots of great information, white papers, case studies, and to even demo the platform for yourself. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.